Today we will analyze the impacts of forever chemicals on humans on large scales using the functionalist theory. Considering the number of citizens affected for almost 100 years and the chemical enterprise making efforts to remedy various PFAS that have affected the U.S., we want to see the complete picture. Here is my critical annotated bibliography, which contains a multitude of data that I have narrowed down for my brief presentation. To the population who is unacquainted with the problem of eliminating forever chemicals inside the loopholes of chemical policy. Forever chemicals are poisonous industrial elements designed without precautionary principles to withstand decomposition, including breakdown from extreme heat. There are two types of forever chemicals. The first group we know as PFAS, per polyfluoroalkyl substances, and the second group is known as BPs, bisphenols. They are both oil stain and water resistant, making their molecular bonds last forever. PFAS is an umbrella term for nearly 80,000 chemicals in commerce. Imprudent business measures cause PFAS to accumulate in our ecosystem, so the impacts occur over time while detoxification slows down. DuPont began producing PFAS in the 1930s as a coating for military equipment that expanded its use as Teflon for domestic production following 3M's announcement for globalization in the 1950s. The possibility of economic loss emerged in the 1960s when chemical companies DuPont, who invented the chemicals, and 3M, who became DuPont's primary manufacturer, work together to identify the toxicity that forever chemicals have on ecology through unreported experiments with chimpanzees. I would like to include this short video of the experiment.
In one of the studies, the monkeys are given 4 different doses of PFAS. The study is originally intended to run for 90 days, but is discontinued after just 20 days because all 16 monkeys have died. The higher the dose, the faster the monkeys die.
Okay. Let's move on to slide 3. A 1977 3M memo stated their findings that PFAS are, this was obtained from Vice News, in quote, certainly more toxic than anticipated, in quote. Surveys from factory employees in 1981 reveal C8 per fluorooctanoic acid, or PFOA, in the blood of 8 female employees. This was also obtained from Vice News. In quote, 2 of them had children with birth defects, in quote. 1 child by the age of 2 had, in quote, unconfirmed eye and tear duct defect, in quote. And the second child, aged 4 months, had, in quote, 1 nostril and eye defect, in quote. In 1998, the Environmental Working Group pressed for improved guidelines for monitoring after tracking the presence of PFOA, PFOS, perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, and other PFAS chemicals in drinking water. The Environmental Protection Agency had reduced PFOA and PFOS public safety levels. As lower quantities were proven toxic, the EPA concluded that there are no safe amounts to consume. So the EPA and the EWG agreed on banning PFOA and PFOS for domestic production in the 2000s. Despite the ban, scientists have shown concern about the newer generation of a less playful way to describe the chemical game in, quote, regrettable substitutions, in quote. Gen X, which Chemours claims is just a trade name, and PFBS, perfluorobutane sulfonate, most recently detected in communities along the eastern half of the Cape Fear River in North Carolina. The problem became a loophole in our chemical policy when the affluence of chemical companies became burdened. Their economic loss amid charges and improvements throughout lawsuits instigated chemical whack-a-mole, in quote, a game where scientists discover they are harmful, so the chemical companies take them out but replace them with chemical cousin, another unregulated toxic chemical. Federal consequences for industrial polluters are insufficient as plaintiffs discern current laws. Would we still have a future without sustainable development? How can we put PFAS in the past without devastating the economic structure of chemical companies while maintaining safe contemporary lives for consumers? From my research, considering the conflict perspective, I decided to analyze this ongoing predicament optimistically, attributing the macro approach. Although industrialization did not guide modernization in transparency, society is shifting to a new era, applying innovative inventions. Functionalist theorists relate to society as Emile Durkheim did, where each aspect is interconnected and interchangeably delivers to our overall functionality. The lens of functionalism influences safer placements amid the Sustainable Development Goals and reinforces the elimination of PFAS production as consumers react to safer and healthier resources. Ignored history enables the PFAS crisis. It is evident that economic gains are at stake for profitable groups such as DuPont, 3M, and the federal government that retire the stability of the working class to vulnerable positions. Clearly, the anticipation for economic growth among hierarchical ladders is negligent to the safety of our planet, which explains imprudent decisions during construction placements. City dwellers and natives of the environment, like farmer Wilbur Earl Tennant from West Virginia and farmer Jason Grosick from Brighton, Michigan, are economically affected victims of PFAS pollution because they are in the same vicinity of either the chemical factory where PFAS are produced and disposed illegally, or a landfill where PFAS contaminates the groundwater. It is understood that improper disposal of chemicals will forever reach essential water bodies that subsequently impact human lives for the worse. Farms are most economically impacted by pollution because they are either forced to end production without pre-existing knowledge of forever chemical pollution or forced to address remediation alone. To most, it is the only subsistence they have ever known, which is why they are natives to their land through honest generational endeavors. Spin-off companies, such as Chemours from DuPont, were established in 2015 to make it more difficult to contact them. Pollution victims of all ages have been stuck in a plateau, dwindling for justice and remediation that government and chemical companies will not satisfy the socio-economic survival, whether honest farmers, former factory laborers, plant operators, or high school students. They are oppressed to a lower class or even death. The stability of diligent or indigenous citizens is nearing an end through no fault of their own. considering their stewardship to the community and keenness to support a capitalist system. Although I do not recognize racial trends, the blue-collar class is usually impacted by pollution, especially when the group of people who have the power of development neglects to include natives of the environment in their developmental decisions, not to mention the lack of ethics and relevance that is parallel to recent science when constructing these decisions. Again, I feel they are more impacted by forever chemicals than others because they are more often exposed than others. Though studies have shown more than 96% of Americans have at least one PFAS chemical in their blood, the population living near PFAS production and waste, or who use contaminated biosolids as fertilizer, like Rustic Farm, significantly accumulate higher levels before trace amounts are exposed in various locations. In conclusion, furthermore to my previous comment, a functionalist view under the current strategy for monitoring and removing PFAS when applicable is a positive reinforcer to avoid further conflict, supposing each social group intends to cooperate in what is best for society altogether. Due to the characteristics of forever chemicals, there is a necessity for commercial and industrial use, where gradual development exists, not only for the returns from companies like Ford and General Motors, but for the stability of modern living. As statewide municipal wastewater surveys leave us with shocking results, we continue progressing in advocacy, wrangling for clean water, and confident that industrial business is thoroughly inventing new ways to market, in quote, non-essential, in quote, items by using ethical and relevant material that is parallel to recent science when producing such tangibles. Restoration leads to environmental injustice. It is not evident whether America's rankings will exacerbate chemical management cohesion. However, continued interventions providing legitimate public sample kits for citizens without permits could assist in ensuring the credibility of our country's current plan of integrity to support safer ecosystems. Results will give households the data they need to engender smooth functioning when independently planning to clean their environment. Lastly, ensuring products for their safety can also help eliminate production. When you notice an item marketing BPA-free, ask the manufacturer, in quote, well, what else is in it? We don't want anything in that whole class of chemicals, end quote. Thank you all, and if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.